This is episode 60 of the Gauntlet Podcast. My name is Jason.
I'm Lowell.
And I'm Rich.
All right, we have a lot of stuff to cover this week. A lot of things going on in the hobby right now. I think, if you guys don't mind, we're going to skip community feedback and giving me life so that we have more time to talk about all the games we've been playing. What do you guys think?
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm good with that, but I do want to front load just one announcement. I just saw this, Jason. Avery, the author of Monsterhearts, she is looking for feedback for a possible revised edition of Monsterhearts and has posted up a Google Plus form. So I'd really like if we could just link that in the show notes, and anyone who's a big fan, has played Monsterhearts, wants to give feedback that she can consider as she maybe does a revised edition. I just want to do that up in the front to make sure that people get the opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hadn't heard about that before, but that's pretty exciting. I'm a big fan of Monsterhearts, so that's pretty cool. We'll include some notes for that. Okay, so I know you guys went to Origins, and we're going to talk about Origins stuff in a minute. But first of all, Rich, I know you were really, really hype about this game, 1%er, the Outlaw Biker Gang, or Biker, that's not even right, the Outlaw Biker Game. What's it about? Well, is that the most obvious question ever, what it's about? It's kind of right there in the title.
It is a weird name to call it 1%er. You would think that maybe it had to do with like the whole Wall Street thing and people doing sit-ins or slacktivism, or I don't even know. I don't know why it's 1%er. I mean, there's a bit of an explanation. So this came from, do you remember that time when I went through all the drive-through entries for like the super sale?
I do, yeah. I remember thinking you're crazy.
This was one of the games I bought. And, it's by Creepy Doll Studios. The designer is Robert Nolan. And it's basically a Sons of Anarchy, the RPG. So you create a biker gang, and you create your biker within the club, and you even go through the process of talking through making a logo, which is kind of awesome. And, Lowell, you got to sit in on that one. Did you like the logo that we created?
Yeah, that was a fun little step, and it certainly helped set the stage. When we kind of got that idea, very cartoony, and that it was a logo that had evolved over time. It was nice bits of detail we got from that.
Did you actually draw it, or?
I think John drew. Didn't he draw?
Yeah.
He
John Alexander drew some stuff for
cool.
it.
Awesome.
You also create a rival gang, which is really fun, right? Mm-hmm. The mechanics are really tightly focused around biker gang type stuff. Your stats are your expertise with a particular crime that you have. You have a few stats which are interesting, like your mouth, your head, your feet, your hands, and so you build a die pool and roll against the difficulty. So pretty, the kind of thing that you would expect. But there's a particular stat that when I read it, I'll be honest with you, when I read it, there's a lot of curse words, right? And that's all well and good, right? Your biker gang is going to get you, I'm used to the White Wolf, like, let's talk in the world, right? But there's a stat called fucks. As in, how much of a fuck do you give about this thing, right? And
I thought it was like a measure of like how well they fuck.
No.
Okay, got it. All right.
I'm
glad you clarified that, because that's what I thought it was. I read in the notes.
So no, it's how many fucks you give. So it's a statistic. It's a number, right? And you can spend those fucks to give yourself a bonus die, or you can effectively use that as a helping die. Like, hey man, I totally give a fuck about you. I'm going to toss you one of these, right?
Nice,
you deplete that pool. It is also something you can be diminished during, big fights, right? Get the fuck beat out of you, right? Isn't it neat how
it's clever. It's
clever. It is. The thing is, once you reach 0 fucks, whether it's through, caring too much about everybody and spending that pool, or getting your ass beaten, once you're out of those, then you're effectively not functional in the gang. And the only way to get them back, I love this. The only way to get your fucks back is to either go out and do some vigilante street justice,
okay,
or to do some charity work.
What? That seems so out of left field. I don't understand
It's out of left field, but it's so in tune with Sons of Anarchy, because the idea of Sons of Anarchy is they're like these badass bikers, right? But they'll go out, they found out this dude's a pedophile. They go out and they take him out to the woods and they beat the living crap out of him and kill him and bury him.
Or I've never seen that show. Okay.
It's great. Lots of handsome guys. You'd like it, Jason.
Well, I've that's why I thought that the fuck stat was what it was, because that's all I've ever heard about it. All I've ever heard about Sons of Anarchy is it's just like guy asses, like nonstop. Like
that is a true statement. Yeah. But the other thing about, like, there was a carnival that one of the early episodes in the first season, there was a local carnival fundraiser type thing, and the Sons of Anarchy were there kind of fronting it. So it works within the Sons of Anarchy. I love it because it juxtaposes so much, like their whole stats. Everything's around committing crimes and being ass. But if you do charity work, you get more of a fuck.
Nice. Well, so how many more sessions of this you guys going to play?
One more session. Tomorrow night we'll finish up this run of the June Gauntlet City Limits.
So it sounds like you really like it. Like, is this, how can people get a hold of it? Like, what's the story with that?
Great question. Creepy Doll Studios, you can head to the website or you can get it off Drive-Thru-RPG right now. And when this episode drops, it is on sale as part of a urban fantasy sale. It's like $350 American, man. For the PDF full game. It's like a 60-page game. It's got some information about actual biker gangs that have existed in history. It's pretty well researched, and it's a fun game. Lowell, did you have anything you wanted to say about One Percenter?
One thing I will say is I'm often a little leery of games that write in the voice of the world to sell itself. I sometimes that doesn't work. This may be the game that most does that, and it most works, because you gave us the briefing sheet and the notes and the stats and things, and everybody was in it, and everyone got the tone right away from that, and we were cursing, and we kind of broke through that barrier of resistance that we had for the first few minutes. And I think in large part because the game rules are presented in, unbelievable
in a voice,
right? In the voice of unbelievable expletives throughout.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. That's got to be a tricky thing to do, because I could see that going off the rails if you really mess that up. That's interesting. A lot of people give Apocalypse World credit for having a similar, for doing a similar thing. Mm-hmm. When I first read Apocalypse World, the last time I read it was the first time I read it, and I found it a little distracting because I was so busy just trying to wrap my head around the game. I didn't need that extra cognitive load of like Vincent's crazy talk, like on the page. But, in hindsight, it's interesting. So I may need to go back and look at it now that I understand the game better. But yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting insight, Lowell, that the language of the text like puts you in mind of the game. That's cool.
The other game I'm thinking of that really did it well for me is Time and Temp.
Oh, yeah.
Presents itself very well that way.
Cool. Is there anything else you guys want to say about One Percenter?
No, other than it's going to get to the table again. I really have had a great time playing this, much more than I expected. I expected some fun, but this group really brought it.
That's super high praise, I tell you, because we power through a lot of games, and they don't often make it around unless they're like Dungeon World or Monsterhearts or something, right? So that's cool.
Yep.
Awesome. I may have to try to get in on one of those. So I just want to get a read on Origins overall. Like, tell me about Origins. How was it?
So this is only my second Origin, so I'll kind of hand the baton to Lowell mostly. To me, Origins is effectively three places. It is the Games on Demand room, the dealer room, and the big bar on 2, where everybody goes after Games on Demand. I think there's more.
Right.
You wouldn't know though, right?
That was my experience. Lowell, tell us what your thoughts on Origins.
So again, last year was the first year that I'd gone in quite a while. So my experience then before that had been about 7-8 years ago, going and doing demos for Eden Studios and running sessions there. And Origins feels much more coherent now. And Games on Demand is sharp and really brings a different experience than the very board game, wargamey, and Pathfindery feel for the rest of the convention. But yeah, my experience, okay, yeah, Games on Demand room, maybe go across the street to the food area, which is extremely accessible, and the dealer's hall. And I don't need to see anything else.
Okay, all right. Well, I wanted to hear about panels and huge tournaments.
Nope.
Okay.
I did walk down because one of my friends was doing the WizKids Nationals, were apparently there for all the different things. And that was
like HeroClix and all that.
That was a beast of a place. And I was only there for a few minutes. And I brought my wife, and she was like, "Oh, yes, I'd forgotten what these areas looked like in the game stores."
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some games then. So, Lowell, you got to play Urban Shadows.
Yeah, I'm seriously behind the curve. I have had the book and I've read through it, but I hadn't had a chance to play it. And it was what I was hoping it would be. And not only that, we played with Marissa Kelly. Sherry and I played in a session with some great players, and the GM made it feel easy and pulled together and assemble everything at the table, which is, I'm always in admiration when the GM can go, okay, here are the playbooks, come up with your stuff, do a little bit of cross building, walk away for 5 minutes, and I've got a story for you. And I think that's really tough. I think it's a really brave thing, and it really shows some skill and competency. It also shows that the game lends itself to that the cross building is very smartly done. And I enjoyed it. We had a great little story. I felt complete to me. We got to use a lot of the different moves. And the only perhaps bad thing about doing it in a one shot is there are all of those elements that are built on debts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And connections and long-term things. And you see them, but you can't as well interact with them. For example, I chose the vampire because I thought that was an interesting idea. And I like doing characters that kind of have some support and manipulation. And I ended up using a lot more of my physical moves than the debt-oriented ones. Which I didn't feel bad about, but there were some things that boy, I'd like to see this in a couple sessions down the road.
Yeah.
How I could bring that about. So I dug it.
Yeah, it's great. It's definitely one of those games that you don't get to see it all until you're a few sessions in, right? Like there's just a lot of moving parts. And, I think that's to its credit. Like when I open up the Urban Shadows playbooks, like especially when I first played it, I was so excited. Like there's so much cool stuff, you know. I'm not normally like one to be drawn in by like, you know, lots of like moves and bells and whistles and stuff on a playbook. But, those are they just look so damn tempting, you know, all the corruption stuff and all the different things you can do, the debt moves and all that. And it's cool. I've run about 5 sessions of it, and, they were great. A little bit of NPC bloat happens. But other than that, it's a pretty solid game.
I'll say 2 things that I think are interesting is Sherry went and my wife played a second session of it with a different playbook. And she came back and said that it was equally enjoyable, but the experience was nicely different for her in taking a very different playbook. Her frame was different. Her experience was very different. And that distinction was good for her. Other thing is, playing it, we got a better sense of corruption, because when I read through the rules, I was like, oh, you're going to get corrupted really fast. It wasn't until I saw it actually going in play, I was like, oh, this is not a immediately drop off the edge mechanic. Right. It's much more drawn out.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah, we've talked about Urban Shadows before. I don't know how much more we need to talk about like the specifics of it. It's by Andrew Medeiros and Mark Diaz-Truman. It is urban fantasy. Think World of Darkness, Dresden Files, that kind of thing. For anybody who's listening has never heard of it, I can't imagine who that would be, but it's got maybe someone out there. Rich, do you have any thoughts on Urban Shadows before we leave?
I agree that Urban Shadows is a really interesting game to play. I would probably I don't see how I would choose to run it at a con because I want that longer play. Same with Apocalypse World, I've found personally for my taste. Monsters barely squeaks in, but that's only because people kind of take it to 11. So that even ends up in a satisfying play for me. So those are 3 games that I like more in a mini series or campaign fashion. But man, Urban Shadows was the game of games on demand. Magpie Games represented. That was in every slot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow,
every slot.
It's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good game. It's a solid game. When I ran it, I definitely had some issues with NPC bloat. That was my biggest criticism of it. And then, some of the people at my table had an issue kind of along the lines, that some of the Jankcast crew was talking about last week. I don't know if you guys heard that one or not, but they were running into an issue, and some of my players did too, where they almost kind of resented the like mechanical incentivizers for like going out and interacting with other people. Like on Jankcast they called it mechanical dissonance, which I thought was cute. This idea of like this mechanic is making me do a thing that I don't need to be told to do. Like I can go do that, and I feel this unnecessary pressure to engage with this mechanic, right? I get a little bit of that with like strings and conditions in Monsterhearts too. Like you get a good group like really rolling on Monsterhearts, and the strings and conditions tend to fall off a little bit because everyone's like just already, playing to the hilt, to the point where I sometimes have to stop and say, hey, I want to remind you guys about the rules and what kinds of things you could be doing right now with this game. So there's a little bit of that, I think, but all in all though, the playbooks are solid. The moves are great. And I always have, I've played it. I ran it 5 times and I've played a few, as a player, I've played a few times and I've always had a good time with it. So.
Yeah. I enjoy playing it. I think that game, the bloat that you mentioned, that's a little much for me to run, but yeah, it's a good
I almost
game.
had like I almost legit had like an in-fiction like warehouse fire at a rave just to kill off some NPCs. I was like, I gotta kill some of these motherfuckers. There are too many of them.
I do want to circle back to something that you said, Rich, that I think is really interesting. It was very clear that Magpie, they had brought a lot of people there. They had and people beyond them were running their games. But they also had a very coherent sense of how to do it at a con, how to showcase and show off these games at a convention, what you need to do, how you need to prep. It really, really admired that they have put some serious thinking into what a con game for X, Y, and Z game is and how it demonstrates the elements of it. And across the board, they were dynamite on that.
I mean, Magpie executes, right? I mean, let's be real. I mean, like I've always admired that about Mark. I mean, Magpie, they hit it. I mean, they just do. And, I admire that. I respect that. I like to think that the Gauntlet in our little tiny way, we're all about execution too. And I really admire what they do. I think it's cool. And it's cool to hear that about Origins. Well, I'm going to take us out of Origins for a minute and just talk really quickly about ViewScream. I don't have much to say about it right now. It is a LARP played over Hangouts by Raphael Chandler. It is every player plays a crew member of a spaceship that is in distress in some way. And you're all like on different isolated parts of the ship. You're all trapped in the space that you're at. And like a LARP, you each have, you have like a character sheet that tells you your motivations and how you feel about the other characters and some of the other different like, mechanical things you need to know for the game. And, you kind of just freeform it out and you occasionally like introduce emergencies and the other players introduce possible solutions for your emergencies. And, they work on it for a couple minutes and then you go have conversations with Bridge over here. Then you check back in to see if they, were able to fix your problem. And there's a really thick layer of horror, that kind of like underrides it. We got to play one game of it. A game lasts about 60 minutes. So, it was a pretty limited window of like, experience with the game. It was really cool. I was into it. It felt, surprisingly immersive using Hangouts. Like it was a surprisingly immersive experience. We had some overlays on the Hangout that had like, that made it look like, spacey terminals or whatever, like around our faces. And it felt surprisingly good. Like it was, I have to give Raphael credit, like the gimmick of, the Hangouts interface also being your interface on the spaceship is like shockingly, surprisingly effective. We were all really impressed by how effective that was. It was cool. There's like there's a little mystery, like in our scenario, one of the characters had like a secret motivation, it was great fun. Mechanically, there's not too much to say because it's a LARP, and so it's not really about like, mechanics as much as, or at least like hard mechanics as much as it is about like just your ability to kind of improv it out, and I think if you're not comfortable doing a little bit of improv, this game is probably not going to be an easy game for you. Especially because it has like a lot of like technical, like there's some technical jargon going on, and Raphael like emphasizes you don't have to like get involved in that. You can kind of just be really, you don't have to like try to come up with like technical solutions to things, right? You can kind of, keep that as simple as possible. But, it's nevertheless, you have to be somewhat comfortable with, just free form and improv. Otherwise you're not going to get a lot out of this game. But, we were all having a good time with it. It was a good time. I'd like to play it again,
I have a soft spot in my heart for ViewScream. I played the first edition. I was part of the playtest group when Raphael was asking for people to look at second edition before he did the Kickstarter. Some of the changes he made to second edition really clarified the rules for me. I like the playset ideas, but the reason I love ViewScream the most is that Arnold Cassell, he created a hack of ViewScream called Puppet ViewScream. That came out. Yeah. It's like a Muppet apocalypse kind of ViewScream hack, and that is how okay. Dr. Tom the Frog, that was his first public appearance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on Arnold's YouTube channel. If anyone's
a little dismissive to Dr. Tom having to play with puppets, though.
He decided that he would play with the King of Robots because he'd heard some really good stuff about the guy. But yeah, Dr. Tom the Frog, that was his first public game that he'd ever played. So soft spot in my heart for ViewScream. It's really great time, and it's quick too, right? It's done in an hour. Not that much of a commitment.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't overstay its welcome. I mean, it felt really good. I mean, it was, you get just enough off the character sheets to tell you how to play your character and how they feel about the other characters. And then you just kind of go with it, and then role playing happens,
yep.
One of the things I really liked about the game is the game has sort of a built-in fictional, like, pressure valve that you can tap into if you can't think of what to say. So you just kind of say, I just need to check on that for a minute. Okay. Let me do some readings and get back to you. And then you just like jump out, while you think about what to say, that was pretty effective. And it was cool. We didn't break immersion the whole time. I mean, we were like in character for the whole 60 minutes. Like there was it was total immersion. It was really cool. I definitely want to try it again.
Nice. Yeah, that immersion's a big part. You're only playing for an hour. You're supposed to be 100% in. So I'm glad you guys pulled that off and enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was terrific. Lol, you got to play Worldwide Wrestling. How'd that go?
Yes. Well, so I really wanted to play it because, I've just started to get into watching wrestling. I don't know very much about it. I mentioned this the last episode I was on.
Right,
and Nathan was, the game designer, was running it. And of course, it's a wrestling Powered by the Apocalypse game. And I had committed this week to run a session of it. So I really wanted to see how it ran because I was completely uncertain. And I had a great time. Had a dynamite time.
Good. It's good. Yeah.
And even though my character was kind of the first one to get taken out, in some ways in the tournament, I loved every minute of it. Everyone got into it, the back and forth, the way the card kind of changed, the story that evolved out of it. And I didn't have to know anything. There were a few people at the table that did, and they were able to play on that, but I never once felt like I was out of my depth. I was able to go to the moves. I was able to kind of describe what I wanted to do. I was able to go to the little sheet he has with the drawings. And so, wow, I felt really good about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I played Worldwide Wrestling fairly recently, and with a mixed group over multiple sessions, where half the table knew wrestling really, really well, and the other half of the table didn't know shit about wrestling, and it was good. Like, you know, I'm curious if your wrestling experts, did they sometimes like roll their eyes at like your description of wrestling? Like, did that ever happen?
No, not at all. But again, I think when you're at a table around, there's a real heat that generates of everybody kind of being in on it. And so when we were announcing, like at one point, the guy next to me, was announcing. And so we were co-announcing. So we were going back and forth with the mic. And so there's that physicality of kind of moving it back. And we actually had a microphone that we were passing around. I think it's really a game that has a physicality. And so at the table, face to face, it really pays off.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, we should mention that Worldwide Wrestling is a Powered by the Apocalypse wrestling game by Nathan Paoletta. Is it Paoletta?
I think so.
There are a bunch of playbooks for that thing.
I regret he had a bunch of new ones that were from the Kickstarter they did just a little while ago that is supposed to be coming out. And looking at those, I super regret not having backed that Kickstarter. I wish I had. And
so are you more excited about your Lucha ghost hunting thing now?
Yeah. That is going to be on when I get that going.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Is there anything else you want to say about Worldwide Wrestling?
No.
All right. Well, you also got a chance to play Golden Sky Stories. You want to talk about that too?
So I had looked at it briefly. I'd gotten it in a bundle of holding a few years ago. I like anime stuff. And I'd also looked at a couple of others. I'd looked at Ryutama and Chubo, both of which have a lot of rules. And even Golden Skies, when you look at the character sheet, at first you're like, oh, there's a lot of boxes and a lot of numbers and things.
Yeah, I thought that too.
But it didn't, when we got to play, it didn't feel that
it's not
diceless.
Yeah, it's totally deceptive. Yeah, it's really deceptive.
So it's sort of Miyazaki anime-esque. You all play characters who are transformed animals, hengeyoke. And you can be different kinds of hengeyoke. You can be a kitsune fox spirit, or like I was, a raccoon dog, a tanuki, and there are a couple of birds. And it's diceless, and you're moving little points, point tokens around. Our GM had a big bowl of tokens that people could grab and throw to other people, and she could give out. And it's a very gentle little story. There are no mechanics for combat. And I mean, I love Miyazaki things. It was fun. It was easy to do. And the GM really clearly had a love for the material, and she was really good.
I love the fan mail aspect of that game. Like you mentioned, little tokens that go back and forth, dreams or whatever they're called. That is so good because I played that game a bunch.
Really?
Way back with Golden Sky Stories. And, I used to play it face to face in Houston, and like, this is the same group of people who would like, we would do like the most inappropriate, nasty shit with the final girl, right? Or we would do like really, really hard Apocalypse World or Monsterhearts. And then we'd play Golden Sky Stories, and it was like, it became like, we wanted those dream tokens so bad. So we are just like being as cute as possible. I mean, we are making it so cute and so fluffy and like heartwarming, and it is good though. It's fun. I mean, that little mechanic really, really enforces the tone in a good way. Like it really, really like makes you play, right? Because you want the approval of your peers, You want
your approval, and you also want to have the chance to give approval to other people.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's as much fun.
Yeah.
And I do also have to call out, so our GM was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
She'd run this. Wow. This is the second session of that she'd run. And God, I wish I was that coherent as a GM when I was 15. She was awesome. She was solid. Running for 5 adults who are all clear veterans who've been running all week, and playing all weekend. And
she was a pro, right? She wasn't intimidated or anything, was she?
No, she kept going. She clearly came at it like she had played with us before in a way that I would have been just terrified. Wow. So that she's going to be even more awesome as she gets older. That's all I can say.
Awesome. Yeah, Golden Sky Stories is fun. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, I mean, No, it was fun, and I'm going to want to play it again. Bring it to our home group at least once or twice.
I have to say, just a little sneak preview for listeners. We have another podcast starting this week. In fact, it'll have already landed by the time this goes up, called Pocket Size Play. And episodes 2 and 3 is Golden Sky Stories. They do a part 1, then a part 2. I think it's an ongoing, they'll revisit it periodically, of Golden Sky Stories. And they did a really good job. Like, it's a really, really cute story. I get to listen to them early, right? And I was listening to it and I was just like, my heart was warmed. I was like, this is delightful. They're doing such a good job. So anyway, just a little thing to look out for, listeners. Rich.
Jason.
I am so excited to hear about Zombie World. I tried to play this at Dreamation and I could not get into it. What is Zombie World?
It is not what I expected. Here's the deal. I ran a bunch during Origins because I was part of Games on Demand. I got a free badge. There's a point where they said, hey, this Saturday night we're going to need more people, that kind of stuff. So I only got to play a couple games at Origins. Everything else was me running. Zombie World was a game that was out on the slots. It was, I looked across all of the games before I went to the back of the line. The lines were really long, and I was at the very back of it because I was almost to the point where I said, I've run a whole lot today. I don't even know if I want to play, but let me see what's out here. Oh, Zombie World and a couple others are interesting. Okay, cool. I thought Zombie World was basically, hey, let's do Apocalypse World, but with zombies. I'm entirely sure that was a thing that I was super interested in. So I get in, Brendan Conway from Magpie Games running the game. Turns out it is basically The Walking Dead, the RPG. I mean, this game really, really hits some interesting aspects from the stories of Walking Dead. It's using a PBTA, so the world part. It's using the chassis of the Powered by the Apocalypse, but it uses cards.
Okay.
I know.
I'm interested.
And it's not just, hey, let's just use cards. They're using several different aspects of playing cards. And supposedly they're thinking about the possibility of having a custom deck, but it was just a zombie colored or zombieified straight up deck of 52 playing cards. The face cards are your 10 plus.
Okay.
And the ones, the aces are ones, but if you want to take on a stress, you can bump it up to a face card, but it can actually, like, you keep pushing that, it's going to be dangerous to you. And then the number value cards are your 2 through 9. And they shuffle the deck like kings and queens. There's a few things there that I'll get to in just a second. The other aspect of the game that's very interesting is that your character creation process is 3 playing cards. You have a cool little playmat. You have your past, which is where 1 card goes face down. You have your present, which is where 1 card goes face up.
Oh, that's cool. I love it already. I know. I already know where this is going. I love it. It's cool.
And then you have a trauma, which goes face down unless the card itself says play face up. So they just dealt regular cards, and then it's kind of cool. I mean, these guys, as you said, Magpie Games, they really know how to do it right.
They hit it. They know how to do it. Yeah, they hit it.
They already have, like a little Bitly website. You go and you can look up your cards on a phone app.
Nice.
I mean, it's real simple. It's basically just it's like a little web page, but it's great, right?
It's a game in beta. Yeah, it's awesome.
Exactly. That way they can change it on the fly, right? I thought that was super smart. So I looked up my character. Oh, and so your present is what everybody knows, right? This is who you've been since the apocalypse. And it's like, it has just happened. You have lost a lot of people. Your past is whatever has happened before, and it's not known. However, during our character, like, here's who our characters are, we're creating the place where we're currently staying. I looked at my past, and he was a teacher, and why would he hide that? So flip it over. I'm pretty open about it. Other people had past they were definitely hiding.
Right, yeah.
So that's a really neat part of it. And then you have 4 stats that you can create, and it's your normal, like, +2, +3 and everything, except that is the number of card draws that you get.
Okay, cool. All right.
So I like that, You get those number of cards. You always have the possibility of using stress to boost up your roll. And then when certain cards are drawn, like when an ace happens and you boost that up, they reshuffle the deck. So there's no way to really count cards in this game, which I think is a benefit, right? There was supposedly some talk about, it'd be nice if we could wait a little bit longer, and that could be a certain kind of tension. I get that, but I like the fact that it just felt like dice, right? It was constantly being shuffled around, literally. Here's the part that makes it really go over the top for me. Okay, if we were just doing Apocalypse World with cards and zombies, that would be fun, but it wouldn't be anything for me to write home about, right? I could totally do that. But here's the deal. You've got this relationship stuff going on. You also, during character creation, you're building part of your community, because this is a survival community, because you're currently in a stronghold. And there are mechanics for an ally that you have, right? You actually have kind of rules. You can have them going off and doing stuff. So it kind of feels like there's more of a concerted effort. Mm-hmm. And then there are rules for your stronghold, and they're abstracted, but they have immediate benefits to conflict. So if you have certain assets within your stronghold, it changes the play deck that everybody is using. Unless those cards are drawn out, then it depletes that thing. So you've got to go and kind of build your stronghold back up.
That's cool.
It is really cool because it's not overly complicated. It's not like, let's pull out this whole other sheet of like 16,000 moves. Here's some nice simple ways to, in an abstract way, give us that tangible feeling of being part of this place where we're surviving, where we're hiding out from the zombies.
Badass. That's cool.
It's tight. We had redneck guys who took over the armory who are our enemies. We had this former gangbanger who, as we went out to get some medicine for one of the NPCs that everybody seemed to gravitate towards and care about, she revealed that she was a bus driver before she was like this crazy killer. It was a neat game, and somebody died. This is the thing, right? Hard moves, they are in a whole nother deck, and the deck is called the Bite deck. And we went all out to keep from drawing from that Bite deck in our play. And I understand that a couple PCs died when the Bite deck came out for someone else.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah, it sounds awesome. It sounds like they're doing some really cool shit with PBTA, which is exciting because I think I'm in my arc. I'm in my story arc with PBTA where I'm ready for that,
I like it. And the random character generation, to me, I like that for a game that's hard, that a game where the Bite deck's going to possibly take you down. And we did have one PC death near the very, very end, and probably more coming because it was really, really bad. So I like that because then I could flip and jump into another character within that community, right? Maybe I could even take over my character's ally, like a legacy thing. We didn't get to that point, but I could see that in my head, like, oh, that would be really cool. It's a good game already. I want to play this game more. I want to figure out how to play it over Hangouts. It is cool.
Yeah, that would be kind of a tricky thing, wouldn't it? But I mean, I've played games with like cards on Hangouts using a Roll20 thing. It's okay. It's a little fiddly, but there might be a better solution. I'm not sure.
I will say this is the game that my wife played Bluebeard's Bride, and she played Zombie World, and Zombie World is the one that kept her up so that she couldn't fall asleep. She spent hours after the game just thinking about the mechanics. It just went through her head, and she was because we do card-based stuff, and she loved it, and it got in her head. She thought it was dynamite.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like one we're going to have to keep our eyes open for when it gets more as it kind of develops along. Rich, is there anything else you want to say about Zombie World?
Yeah, just in case it wasn't clear, if you like Walking Dead and you see this offered at any con, you need to give it a shot.
Cool. Well, let's wrap up. I want to wrap up with Time Cellist.
All right.
Time Cellist. I fucking love Time Cellist. Oh my God, I love Time Cellist. So every now and then a game comes along that just knocks my socks off, and this is one of those games. I dig it. So for Gauntlet, New Jersey, we played this a couple weeks ago for our Friday night drive-in. That's my little cute name for our face-to-face Gauntlet, New Jersey, our Friday night drive-in game. It was such a blast. It was so cool. So Time Cellist is a game by Wheeltree Press, which is Megan Peterson and Todd Nicholas from the Jankcast. It is about, you all play young people who are tasked by Time Cellist to stop the evil machinations of the maestro of maliciousness, who is Tchaikovsky, and his ninja army. Each of the ninjas are named Steve. The idea is that Tchaikovsky figured out time travel somehow, and he's going to different eras in history and concocting these ridiculous, totally over the top, ridiculous schemes that are going to allow him to rule the world. And Time Cellist chases him and tries to stop him, and Time Cellist always employs the help of local youth to help with that. Your characters run around like fighting the Steves, the ninja Steves, and trying to stop them from doing whatever they're doing to enact the maestro's plan. And then you meet up eventually with Time Cellist, and you actually have like a big boss battle with the maestro. And then you have epilogues at the end, and Time Cellist does the classic, after school special, the more you know, knowing is half the battle, G.I. Joe speech, right, to the kids. So fucking fun. Here's what I love about this game. So the vibe is really cool. It's very much, it feels like a combination of like Goonies and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but like was also Saturday morning cartoons. Like it has like the vibe of those three things. It kind of like really, really, mix well together. We were laughing and having such a good time with the game. Mechanically, it does some cool things. So it uses children's games for mechanical resolution. So when we're fighting the Steves, you engage in Rochambeau or rock, paper, scissors, right? With the GM. And depending on how that goes, you earn this currency that you can spend later on in the final fight with Tchaikovsky to help your teammates. If the GM wins, he gets some advantages as well, which I'll talk about in a second. A really cool thing happens in the rock, paper, scissors that I'm going to talk about in a second. But anyway, children's games. Rock, paper, scissors. When you're fighting Tchaikovsky in the big final battle, you play slapjack. We did like an audio slapjack instead of a like speed, hand slapping slapjack. We played slapjack where you had to yell out musical instruments whenever a jack came up, and that's how you collected the stack of cards. You play slapjack, and every time someone collects the stack, I'm just assuming listeners know what slapjack is. Every time someone would like collect the stack, they got to narrate like some of the action, like as you're fighting Tchaikovsky, right? Or if the GM wins, he gets to, narrate Tchaikovsky and his forces, like, kind of trying to push back Time Cellist and the kids. And then at the end, for your epilogues, use a cootie catcher or a paper fortune teller, right? You make one and you write down some possible epilogues and you do a little cootie catcher, and that determines what your character's final epilogue is. So that part of the game is super fun. Really, really tight connection between like the mechanics and the theme of the game, right? Like you've got these children's game mechanics in a game about children. Works super great. I have to say, my favorite part of the game, when you're playing the rock, paper, scissors, if you get a tie, like let's say we both play paper, a time anomaly happens. I think it's called a time anomaly. It's either time paradox or time anomaly, something like that. What it is basically something enters your setting that is completely out of place, right? So our historical setting was King Arthur's Camelot, which is not actually an historical setting, but we kind of fudged it and made it one. We were in King Arthur's Camelot, and all the characters were like children who worked around the castle, so like stable boys and maids and that kind of thing. Our time anomaly happened, and we just chose one from the book, and there's a lot of really good ones in the book. We had Elvis and a film production crew filming a sequel to Viva Las Vegas roll into our King Arthur's Camelot. And it was amazing. It was so good. Like, the game is really gonzo, right? But it felt so awesome because it was something we would have on the table that we could just use to make the scene like funny, you know, like things are going on and then suddenly here comes a production assistant like trying to shove an NDA in a character's face, right? You know, or something like that, you know, or a waiver. It was just a blast. And we only had the one time anomaly, but just that one was enough to, like, we were just laughing and just having so much fun with it. The game is so cool. There's so much possibility. It's got this really nice kind of like baked in setting, like this combat between Time Cellist and Tchaikovsky, you know, this like, you know, these two enemies and all Tchaikovsky's minions, like his ninjas, Steve, and his ferret named Finley. It's got all that kind of baked in, but because you choose a different historical setting each time you play, the replayability is going to be really high there, right? I mean, because you can kind of, you know, okay, now we're going to do, you know, Roman times. Now we're going to do 1920s New York. Now we're going to do, you know, whatever. And you play characters from that era, right? We had a lot of fun with it. It was so great. I am thinking of games like The Final Girl and Goblin Quest and Cheat Your Own Adventure as games in the last, you know, few years, like 5 years or so, that have really like just blown me away, like are doing everything I want in like a lighthearted, fun, accessible role-playing game, a game that I want to get to the table over and over again. This is one of those games. Time Cellist is awesome.
I'm really happy to hear that. I backed the Kickstarter. I want to get it to the table. I've got a copy here I have not read, so that's your
exciting. Wife and kid are going to love this, Rich. They're going to love it.
Sweet.
Like, play it with them.
Okay, I will. It reminds me of oh gosh, is it Magical Treehouse? I think a book series that my son reads, and sounds a little bit like the Magic School Bus, which was a book series also on PBS. And Bill and Ted's.
It's got that vibe.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
It's a lot of that. Yeah. It's fun. I mean, I'm always on the lookout because I play games with a pretty wide variety of people, including non-gamers, right? And I'm always on the lookout for a game I can pull out with non-gamers or people who don't game very often. And in fact, we had one at our table. We had a guy who had never played role-playing games who showed up for our game and, from Denmark. And, he had never played, I think he'd maybe played D&D a long time ago or something, but otherwise had no experience. He had such a good time. And I think it's a testament to this game's like accessibility. Like it's completely accessible. It's the sort of game like The Final Girl I would bust out at a party. Like I would have no compunctions about doing that at all.
About how long would you say? It's a 2-hour, 4-hour game, would you say, for a session?
We were scheduled for 4 hour, but we finished in 3 hours. Okay. So, yeah. You do like a little setup process. It has a really solid setup process too, which I'm not going to go into right now, but, you do the setup process, and then you have like basically 3 big scenes, where you're fighting the Steves, like to stop them from doing these 3 different like plans, you know, that the maestro has tasked them with. And then you have the big final battle. So the 3 scenes and then the final battle, those are like extended scenes. Like they're like a little bit longer than a normal scene, but there's only 4 of them. So, it ends up being about a 3-hour total experience. And we didn't make the cootie catcher and stuff beforehand. So we had to like actually like get out a piece of paper and make it like right there on the spot. But one of our players was like I was ready to bust out a YouTube video to make sure I could do it right. And she was like, no, it's so easy here. And she just like, boom, 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 did it. So yeah. It's a good time. I have to say, one of the most interesting aspects of the game was, so there are these characters, these ninjas called Steve, right? And there's a whole little story about like what that's all about. And I don't want to ruin it. I think people should go get the book and read it for themselves. But it was so fun giving those characters life. Like it was really, really enjoyable. Like, just the like the way they appear on screen and like, we were just really hitting our comic timing as a group and it was just good. I mean, I had such a great time. And I really think that, you know, I just really think this is one of those games that people need to have on their shelf. So, yeah, it's a total, unqualified, totally unreserved, recommendation from me. So listeners, that was our show. You can find us in a number of places, but I recommend going to the website gauntlet-rpg.com or gauntlet-rpg.com if you prefer. At that website, you will find links to all of our programs, including Plus One Forward, Discern Realities, and Pocket Size Play. We also have links to our community page, our G Plus community. As of the day of this recording, we are at 665 members. One more member, and all the Pathfinder players get raptured. So, not my joke. I can't take credit for that joke. Some clever person in the community who had that joke today. So go join our community. Follow us on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. Lowell, is there anything you want to plug before we leave?
No, just my blog, Age of Ravens. That'd be what I would plug. Podcast, Play on Target.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this time again.
Thank you.
Rich, thank you so much as always.
Thank you, Jason.
And thanks, listeners. Bye. I'm tempted to sing the Time Cellist song right now.
I think you should lead off with the Time Cellist. Come on, I want to hear the Time Cellist song. Sing for it, Jason. Come on.
I can't find my book anywhere. I don't know where the lyrics are.
Hold on, I've got the PDF. Okay. I'll just send it to you.
No.